Good morning and welcome to this online worship service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven, USNH. I'm Jim Peters, co-chair of the worship committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to this morning's service, our annual flower communion marking the end of our church year. We are very glad you found us this morning. If you're a newcomer or just have questions you'd like to ask the membership team, please know there's a Zoom meeting right after the service. If you email membership@usnh.org, they'll be happy to send you the Zoom link, and they'll be happy to speak with you anytime. A special good morning to all the fathers here on Father's Day. Father's Day, of course, is a very Sheepy, oh, hi. Is it... Sheepy, is that for me? For Father's Day? Well, thank you, Sheepy. Thank you. Kids, happy Father's Day. We want you to know that today at 12:30 p.m., the Reverend Linda Susan and Jesse Greist will lead an in-person sharing of flowers and music at USNH, rain or shine. Please bring a flower with you if you can. Weather permitting, we also invite people to bring blankets and picnic lunches to enjoy masked and socially distanced informal time together on the USNH lawn. I have another message from Jesse Greist. One and all, people of every age are invited to the first ever U-Olympics, in person and outdoors at USNH on Saturday, July 10th from 11 to 2. There will be non- or minimally competitive games designed for socially distanced, all ages fun, and barbecue lunch provided by the Sunday morning team. Please pre-register using the link in your newsletter and email blast. Now, does anybody wonder if this is going to be a wacky and wonderful event? There's no doubt. So mark your calendars and come to USNH and join in the fun on the 10th of July. Speaking of July, please know that worship services will continue throughout the summer. Next Sunday, June 27th, we will be streaming the UUA General Assembly service at 10:30 as usual. In July and August, we're busy planning a diverse range of worship services. Our music service in August is coming along nicely thanks to those musicians in our community who have offered to participate. Thank you very much. We'd also like to continue our tradition of a summer poetry service, but so far we don't have enough readers. So if you have a poem to share, this is the time to let us know. Please email the worship committee at worship@usnh.org if you'd like to share a poem this summer. Please do. This morning's call to worship has been written by the poet R.H. Swanee. If words are seeds, let flowers grow from your mouth, not weeds. If hearts are gardens, plant those flowers in the chest of the ones who exist around you. Come, let us worship together. Friends, we light this chalice this morning, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist tradition, in memory of the year that was, in gratitude for our extended USNH community. May this light help us to see and be seen in all the ways in which we are able. We share now the words of our covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, we are bound not by a shared creed or single set of beliefs, but by a commitment to be in right relation with one another as we journey through our lives. While the following words express our intentions in writing, our true covenant lives and breathes in our actions. Please join me now in reciting the words that appear on your screen. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, and seek humor and joy.
It was almost the end of the school year, and Faye was pretty happy to be done with middle school. Faye was a Unitarian Universalist, and at her congregation, all of the middle schoolers had been asked to write and share a credo statement, a statement of what they believed and what they had faith in. Every time for 3 weeks that Faye sat down to write her credo statement, everything that she tried to say that she believed in got filled with doubts, whether it was about a divine being, about the changes that she hoped to see in the world, or even humanity itself. Whatever she tried to say, doubt would swirl in and fill her mind. Faye tried to talk to her parents about this, and they listened carefully and gave her the advice that they seemed to always give. Take some time, go out for a walk, think it through, and the answer will come. Well, Faye, who normally didn't like walking, decided this time she would go out and give it a try with an open mind. She opened the door to her house and walked out onto the street and immediately saw her neighbor out in their yard, planting a garden. As Faye walked by and watched the neighbor carefully placing bulbs and seeds into the ground, lovingly covering them up, Faye asked, "I love that you're doing that, But aren't you worried that something might happen? That it won't rain enough? There won't be enough sunshine? Maybe some animal will come and dig up your plants? What happens if those seeds never sprout? The neighbor took a break and took a sip of water and said, "You know, my favorite thing about gardening is the not knowing. Because one thing that is for certain is that if I didn't do this, if I didn't come out here and plant these flowers and fruits and trees, then nothing would grow here." And you know what? It's the believing that they will grow that makes it all worthwhile. Whether they do or not, that doesn't matter so much. Faye was surprised by this, but took that idea and planted it like a seed in her mind. She continued on her way and came across another person who lived on her street. It was a young man who had just started a nonprofit organization working for peace and social justice in their city, and with the hope of growing into something that could affect the wider world. As he got out of his car and slowly closed the door, Faye could see that he was very tired and imagined it was a lot of work starting a nonprofit. She asked the man, "How's it going? Are things working? Do you ever worry that whatever you do, you might not make a difference?" She didn't mean to be rude, but she was genuinely curious about this. The man stopped for a moment and thought about it and said, "You know, there is always a chance that projects that we start and things that we work on won't make much of a difference. But there's one thing I know. If I don't do this work, if I don't get involved and do something, then nothing will change. You know what? By believing that what I do is going to make a difference, that is what brings me peace. That is what brings me hope. That is what lets me sleep at night and get up the next day recharged and ready to go try again." And with that, he went into his house, and Faye continued on her walk, taking that idea and planting it like a seed in her mind. A little bit further down the road, just before she got to the stretch of woods that was at the end of her street, Faye ran into a small child, a girl named Cynthia, who was going out of her house and running towards her neighbor's house. Faye stopped Cynthia and said, "Cynthia, where are you going?" "I'm going to go knock on my neighbor's door because they just moved in and they have a young child about my age and I'm hoping that we can play together." Faye said, "Well, that's great, but aren't you worried that maybe the child won't want to come out and play? Maybe might not come out or say something to you that's hurtful?" Cynthia thought about that for a second and said, "Well, I guess I'll never know unless I try. I mean, it's not really all that important whether she does or doesn't. It's that I go and try. And maybe she'll become my new best friend. I don't know." And with that, Cynthia ran off and rang the doorbell of the house of the new neighbors. Well, Faye walked on and on, replaying these stories in her mind. She went for a walk in the woods, she came back home, and immediately sat down at her desk and began to write and write and write. 3 days later, when it was time to share credo stories at her congregation, Faye strode up in front of everyone and said, "From the conversations I've had, from the talks I've had, I've realized that what I believe and what I have faith in is not nearly as important as believing in something, as having faith in something. I may not have faith in any one particular thing, but you know what I do have faith in? I believe in belief. I believe in faith itself. And that is enough."
In this spiritual community, we remind ourselves each week that joy and woe are woven fine. Some of us bear burdens made lighter as others help us carry them. Some of us hold joys that shine more brightly as others reflect our delight. While we didn't receive any particular joys or sorrows to be shared today, let's take a moment to bear witness to all that the people of this congregation are holding in their hearts. And together, let us give thanks for this community of care.
Good day, friends. This is a garden meditation for this Flower Communion Sunday at USNH. I'm Jane Copes, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I seem to be spending a lot of time on my knees these days. I'm weeding, planting, transplanting, harvesting, planning, more weeding. Every garden is an uncontrolled experiment with soil, weather, seeds, plants, sweat, and luck, and love. And every garden is as unique as USNH's members and friends are. And there are critters in and near every garden. They and we are part of a whole system of providers and users and predators. It's an ecosystem. What would it mean if we planted a garden specifically for pollinators and their caterpillars and even the slugs? If something isn't eating this garden, then it isn't part of the ecosystem. This circle in the parking lot was once home to memorial trees that were planted in memory of a beloved member. Rob's tree is now thriving in a better spot overlooking the Cuddle Time playground. And the space is growing into a pollinator garden filled with New England native perennials and shrubs. Watch this space for a rainbow garden with something blooming and setting seeds to nourish native critters throughout the year. Walk right in on one of the paths to the Peace Garden, where you can just be and share your breath with the plants. We promise that the 5 kinds of goldenrods have nothing to do with hay fever in the fall. I'm spending a lot of time on my knees these days, and maybe you are too.
Friends, the church year is coming to a close, but the life of our community continues through the summer months. Please consider navigating to usnh.org and clicking on the donations button at the top of the page, or mailing a donation to 700 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut 06517. Thank you. The offering will now be gratefully received.
What we call flower communion was a ritual that first began in 1923 in Prague, in what was then Czechoslovakia, by a Unitarian minister named Norbert Čapek. He wanted to find a way to strengthen the bonds among the people in his congregation, but in a way that would be meaningful, no matter what the person's religious background might be and whether or not they believed in God. So he invited his congregants to bring in flowers to share, and each person received a different flower to take home. The riot of colors and variety of shapes reflected the glorious diversity of human beings united in community. Dr. Čapek's wife, Reverend Maya Čapek, brought the ritual to the United States in 1940. This honoring of each person wasn't just something Dr. Čapek celebrated with flowers. He continued to proclaim it even after the Nazis took over Czechoslovakia, even after preaching such sentiments became dangerous. He was eventually arrested and killed for his opposition to the Nazi regime. Today, we continue to honor the unique worth of each individual that makes up our beautiful community. We continue to resist all that would take away the dignity of our fellow human beings. We continue to work for a more just and loving world.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead
Don't give up hope.
with love. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead.
Lift up your eyes.
Lift up your eyes. Lift up your eyes. Don't you despair. Don't you despair. Look up ahead. Look up ahead. The path is there. The path is there. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love.
I know you're scared.
I know you're scared. I know you're scared. And I'm scared too. And I'm scared too. But here I am. But here I am. Right next to you. Right next to you. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. The other one. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. The other one. One foot in front of the other and lead with love. And lead with love. And lead with love. And lead
ways we fulfill our covenant with each other is through the service we offer to the congregation. USNH is blessed to have volunteers and staff who give generously of their time, expertise, and care. They truly lead with love. To honor everyone by name who contributes to the well-being of USNH would take far longer than we have during the worship service. So today we recognize the various groups that make everything possible. These groups are the flowers that make the congregation blossom. We begin our litany of gratitude by adding water from past water communions to the vases where the flowers will gather.
We add a flower each for the Board of Trustees, Buildings and Grounds Committee, Covenantal Relations Committee, Children, Youth, and Adult Religious Education Committees, religious education teachers, facilitators, other volunteers, and of course, the children, youth, and adults who added their spark to classes and events. We add a flower for endowment and legacies, and for the Finance Committee.
We add flowers for the History, Archives, and Library Committee, for the Management Team, for the Membership Team, for the Music Committee and the choirs, for the Nominating Committee, flower for the Pastoral Care Associates, the Personnel Committee, Small Group Ministry Steering Committee, facilitators, and of course participants.
A flower for the Social Justice Council and our many, many social justice groups. A flower for the USNH staff. One for the Stewardship Committee and everyone who participates in the stewardship of USNH. Another flower for all those who organized fundraisers and special collections. One for the Sunday morning team, for the worship committee, and those indefatigable souls who provided tech support for our online services this year. One flower for all who have gracefully transitioned to online worship and who are joining us at today's service, including newcomers to USNH. We're glad you're here.
We also give deep thanks for the lives of those from USNH who have died over the past year. Meredith Fahey, Dorothy Farkas, Helene Goward, Lindsay KORTH, Martin Lipnick, John Marsh, Paula Mattern, John Pollock, June Schaefer, Deborah Selden, Dan Wade, and Kathy Wilson.
At the other end of this spectrum, we are delighted that others have joined our bouquet this year. This flower is for new USNH members and new family members, whether children, grandchildren, life partners, or pet companions. While we can't all be together today for the flower ceremony, I hope you will bring a flower of your own to USNH at 12:30 p.m. today and enjoy the blessings of community by exchanging it for another. Whether or not you have a flower to share, please join us.
Spring has now unwrapped the flowers, day is fast reviving, life in all her growing flowers, toward the light is striving. God, the iron touch of cold, winter time and frost time, seedlings working through the mold, now make up for lost time. Herb and plant that winter long slumbered at their leisure, now be stirring green and strong, finding growth and pleasure. All the world with beauty fills, gold the green enhancing, flowers make gleam among the hills, set the meadows dancing.
Our second reading is from A Bouquet of People by Claire Feingold Thorin. Let us give thanks for a bouquet of people. We give thanks for children. Like tulips and iris, they multiply around us, making the world ever more filled with color, beauty, and new life. May we bless them as they replant themselves ever further from us, knowing that they need their own space to grow into. We give thanks for generous friends, as constant in bloom as echinacea, and whose gifts lift up our body and spirit. We give thanks for feisty friends, as indomitable as geraniums, and for continuous friends who, like bittersweet and ivy, hold on and never let go, and can never be gotten rid of. For crotchety friends, as prickly as rose bushes, their beauty a secret that is only discovered through careful gardening. For surprising friends who at first glance seem dour and then blossom into joy as quickly as forsythia. For funny friends, silly as snapdragons, and serious friends, complex as chrysanthemums. For comfortable friends, their gentle presence as soothing as the sweet smell of lilacs. For stormy weather friends who stand by us in hard times, like lily of the valley that cannot be deterred by shade or shadow. For old friends nodding like sunflowers in the evening time, and young friends coming on as fast as flocks. For friends as unpretentious as dogwood, as persistent as pachysandra, as steadfast as azalea, and who, like snowdrops, can be counted on to see you through the winter and remind you that spring always comes. For loving friends who wind around us like wisteria and embrace us despite our blights, wilts, and witherings. And finally, for forget-me-not friends, gone but never forgotten. Their beauty lives on in our memories and hearts. For this bouquet of people who brighten our lives, each in their own way, we give thanks.
Flower Communion Blessing by Thomas Rhodes. Within our hands, we hold the resurrection of the world. Transient and imperfect, these blossoms are still gifts of infinite value, like ourselves. Too often we seek permanence and perfection, resisting change, oblivious to our shortcomings. We become caught up in the petty issues and routine activities of our daily lives. But may these flowers serve as a reminder as they allow themselves to open to the heavens, for despite their imperfections, they still have integrity. And though they are transient, they contain the seeds of transcendence, like ourselves. Let us then also open ourselves to mystery and wonder, fretting not about small mishaps, or even, for now, great misfortune. For the resurrection of the world is at our fingertips. The resurrection lies within us.
That bloom about our feet, for tender grass so fresh and sweet, for song of bird and hum of bee, for all things fair we hear or sing. Giver of all, we thank thee. For blue of stream and blue of sky, for pleasant shade of branches high, for fragrant air and cooling breeze, for beauty of the blooming trees. Giver of all, we thank thee. For this new morning with its light, for rest and shelter of the night, for health and food, for love and friends, for everything thy goodness sends. Giver of all, we thank thee.
Dear friends, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
In this community, among this bouquet of people, may we find faithful and eager companions to join us on the journey. May we value our collective diversity and beauty, and may we know that we are worthy and loved just as we are. Go forth then, friends, with courage and with kindness, and be a blessing to the world. Amen.
Amen.